The first thing that we need to nail down with Aspen Glow is tone quality. Now, in season 1, I made a couple of episodes just on tone. Episode 1 with right-hand tone and episode 2 with left-hand tone. If you haven't watched those videos, you might want to start there, and then you can get an idea about what's needed for Aspen Glow. There's also some demonstration videos, and you can come up with some warm-up ideas for your group to get them ready to play Aspen Glow. Now, Aspen Glow probably isn't intended for a beginning orchestra, and for beginning strings, you typically want to start with the shorter rhythmic values before you get to the bigger rhythmic values. This is probably going to be played by an orchestra that's been playing at least for a year, and so by now they should be used to using pretty much all parts of the bow. So we can start with the large rhythmic values and work our way in. So some of the larger rhythmic values that the students are going to see in Aspen Glow are going to be the dotted half notes. And at some point in time, everyone has a dotted half note in Aspen Glow. Some sections have it more than others, but what we want to do is establish the tone that we want to have and the bow control that we want to have for the dotted half note. So the way I like to stage this is I like to have the whole orchestra just play dotted half notes on an open D. And I need to make sure that the students can play from frog to tip and then back to the frog on an open D while keeping the bow straight and maintaining a bowing lane. Usually, if a student's not able to do this, it's because they don't have a good bow hold. And so it's not that a student can't move the bow within that frame of time. It's not like they have some kind of motor control issue. Usually it's because like their thumb is sticking through the frog or something like that. They've got a straight thumb instead of a bent thumb, and they're able to get to the tip. This is particularly true in upper strings. They're able to get to the tip, but on the recovery back to the frog, the bow starts to like go all crazy. And so once that tone starts to degrade, the students tend to slow down the bow and just stick to the upper half. So make sure that all of your students are playing with a good bow hold. You might want to do some bow push-up exercises just to make sure that the students are doing that before they start playing these dotted half note open strings, and then have your whole orchestra play these dotted half notes on an open D. Okay, so you've got them playing an open D, and then everything's going all right. You know, the bows are straight and everything. Now we can start to complicate things and see if they can retain that technique. So one of the things I like to do next is start adding dynamics. Maybe do a dotted half note with a crescendo, followed by a half note with a decrescendo to kind of start getting the idea of what the phrasing is going to be like. And then maybe 2 dotted half notes with crescendo, 2 with a decrescendo, and then maybe 3 dotted half notes crescendoing the whole time, and then 1 dotted half note with a decrescendo. And that way they start getting the idea that these aren't going to be static dotted half notes. They're going to be dynamic, and the volume is going to be increasing and decreasing. The flow and the melodic motion of this piece is always going to be moving, and the dotted half notes are going to facilitate that. Okay, so you've got straight bows. They're able to keep a bowing lane. They're able to get from frog to tip on the dotted half notes, and now you've added dynamics. All right, let's complicate it a little bit more. Let's start to add the left hand. Now you can take some finger patterns that are used in Aspen Glow. For instance, the major or 2-3 pattern, whatever your nomenclature is for that, you can do that on the D string, and then see if they're able to keep those straight bows while fingering with the left hand. And then maybe try it on the A string. Try some finger patterns on the A string with dotted half notes and try to get them to use the minor pattern or the 1-2 pattern with half step, whole step, whole step, so that you can start to learn the minor pattern on the A string with the dotted half note and make sure that they can retain their bow technique. Once the students have a decent understanding of the dotted half note, it's time to start looking at some of the smaller rhythmic values like the quarter notes. There's a lot of places where there's quarter notes that make up melodic material, like in the first violins, for instance, and well, even here at the beginning with the quarter rest, 2 quarter notes. The students need to be able to play these quarter notes in a legato style, and they need to be able to generate lots of warm sound while they're playing. And the trick to doing this is to make sure that the students are able to grab the string and to develop that resistance on the string, so the resistance shapes the motion of the arm and not the other way around. Okay, we don't just bend our arms to make us look smooth. We are resisting against the string, that friction on the string, resisting against that friction on the string, which helps to shape the legato sound that we're creating with the bow. Now, if your students aren't using an ample amount of rosin, that might be a challenge. And a lot of times I find that students don't regularly rosin their bow, and I think that's a big mistake, especially if you live in more of an arid climate where the rosin's just drying out all the time. They really need to get that dried, dusty, old rosin off the bow and replace it with some good rosin, and make sure that they're using a decent rosin that's not all dried out to begin with. So you can practice the quarter notes the same way as you practice the dotted half notes. Just have them play on an open D, and just have them play open D quarter notes, and make sure that they're able to do it with a straight bow and they're able to get a legato sound. Now, if they're not able to move the wrist, it might be because they're not resisting against the string. But again, it could just be a bow hold issue as well. So if you see a bunch of students and their bows are going all nuts, well, what you can do is you can just have them do some bow push-ups again, just to make sure that the thumb is bent, that the pinky is bent, and that's going to help a lot with this. Once they establish that, you can again start complicating this. You can add in some phrasing, you can add in some finger patterns, and then just make it a little bit more complicated each time, so that you can make sure that the bow is doing what it's supposed to do when the students are adding another layer of technique to it. So although you're adding dynamics and although you're adding finger patterns, it's still a bowing exercise, and the focus still needs to be on the bow and not the additional thing that you've added. Finally, we're going to need to make sure that we're able to play legato eighth notes. And there's a lot of places here, 51 especially. We have a lot of legato eighth notes in violins and violas. I love this cello section here at 63, where the cellos get a turn to play legato eighth notes. Very beautiful writing, beautiful orchestration here as well. And the students are going to need to play legato eighth notes. So again, it's similar to the dotted quarter note situation. We're just using less bow, but we still want to resist against the string, and we really want to use a lot of wrist and fingertips, keeping everything nice and loose so that we get that nice legato sound. We're going to sound really immature if we're locking up and playing very stiff and rigidly. We want to make this a very musical and rewarding piece, so we need good tone to be able to do that. I like to set it up the same way, just play on an open string. Make sure that the students are able to do what they're supposed to do with the bow, like on an open D or an open A or something along those lines. And then once they master that skill, then you can increase the level of complexity, add some dynamics, add some finger patterns, maybe play a whole scale or something like that with the eighth notes, and make sure that they retain the style and the bow control. Starting with tone development as your primary technique before starting Aspen Glow is going to be like putting money in the bank, because that's going to start creating interest and the equity is going to start to grow there. And that's going to be a good thing, because everything else that we're going to talk about here in Aspen Glow is going to be based upon that tone and that style. In the next video, we're going to talk about intonation, which is also extremely important for Aspen Glow to make it sound the best that it can be. But if we don't have the tone established first, it's going to be very difficult to learn how to play in tune, because without good tone, it's very difficult to hear what you're doing, to develop that resonance and that in-tune sound, that ringing tone. So good luck with your tone development, and we'll see you in the next video when we talk about intonation.